Welcome, everybody, to the August edition of DC Buzz. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the opportunities in this thing called the double WGA SAG strike, two different strikes. With me today, I have, I'm the department chair, Geo Swan. I always forget that. I've been department chair for, I don't know, almost 11 years. And so I also teach a class called Mobility and Data Management, and I've produced and edited hundreds of instructional videos and a couple of music videos, written a couple of screenplays. And with me today in our panel is Randy Baker. I imagine that if you have had this class, you remember him. He is one of our superstars. Just everything from Nickelodeon to I'm trying to remember the doctor one. Randy, can you help me out?
Dr. K's exotic animal
Yes.
star.
He has worked in so many places. He is one of the most knowledgeable people on cameras and Sony cameras in particular, and always keeps his pulse on the industry and anything to do with cinematography. He is just can't say enough great things about him. Superstar. Jonah is one of our adjunct faculty, teaches an intro to post-production, has over 25 years of professional experience in live TV and recorded production, both in front of and behind the cameras. Talent producer, camera operator, editor. You might have joined us when we were talking about Nickelodeon, all of our, except mine, adventures at Nickelodeon Studios, or Jonah was telling us how many hundreds of times he was slimed. And so, yeah, he is an amazing resource with a ton of experience. And so, yeah. So we are
Thank
going to be, oh, you guys can speak up if you want.
you. My
Okay,
mic
so
is
so
saying
our
thank you.
sure our topic is really opportunities surrounding the strike, but in order to have a sort of a context of it and to kind of explain some areas are very affected, but hopefully you'll leave here with a greater understanding of the current environment that we live in, and that there is so much out there that is not involved in either of the strikes. It actually represents a shockingly small part of the filmmaking industry in the United States and around the globe. But it's helpful to know what's going on and what industries are impacted by this. So the first strike to come around May 3rd was the WGA, Writers Guild of America. They represent writers of all kinds, from novelists to people who make television shows, like your fictional stuff, like your Law and Order, to people who write screenplays, like narrative movies, feature films, stuff that appears in Hollywood, up to your more kind of weird, fringy stuff. The writers of the clues on Jeopardy are also WGA members. And a fun fact that Jeopardy is coming back next month, but they're using all recycled clues. So really weird times. Their argument, or their dispute, they're on the other side of the table of the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, who represent the studio. So think of Disney, think of Paramount, Warner Brothers, NBC Universal, that are the money people having to do with the creation of motion pictures and television shows. And a lot of it is involving a few things: residuals. Streaming has exploded since the last time their contract was up for renewal. And you might have noticed some news reports, some stuff on some blog posts that yeah, what writers are being paid is a shockingly low amount of money for the amount of streams that their shows are doing. Talking like I think the one was involving Suits, the TV show Suits, which exploded recently with millions and millions of views on Netflix. Writers were paid anywhere from like $250 up to $3,000 collectively, like per I think it's per quarter. So shockingly low amount of money, only because the contracts last one they signed, streaming wasn't as big of a deal. So they need a renegotiation. The other big dog in the room is artificial intelligence. And that's one of the common issues between both strikes is artificial intelligence is I'm trying to think of the word. Um, it's a technological thing that disruptor. It's a technological disruptor that is really, to both writers and actors and certain types of actors, is an existential crisis. They actually could be taken out of the equation of profit in this industry. So that is definitely something that they need to feel that they need to protect themselves with. So job security is a big thing. About a month later, 2 months later, SAG also striked against the same people, against the studios, the producing union. SAG stands for the Screen Actors Guild, so it's very easy to think that they represent movie stars, and they do, but the majority of their membership is actually, we'll call them part-time professionals, people who appear on 1 or 2 episodes of Law and Order, people who are extras, stuff like that. There are far more of those than your blue-checked movie stars. AFTRA, the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, are think about your voice actors for Family Guy and stuff like that, and The Simpsons. Their agreements, also streaming residuals, kind of the same thing, and artificial intelligence. But on this side, artificial intelligence is perhaps even worse. We have the technology now to scan an actor's likeness, and just the studio can just keep it in perpetuity. And whenever they need an extra, they can just put that in post-production, and the actor essentially never gets work again with the studio. So it really is an existential problem for those lower level individuals, those non-movie stars. So those are the 2 big strikes, and they are affecting some industries, noticeably the film studios, and the areas around the film studios in Hollywood, Atlanta, New York, all those fun places that we film things. So associated services like crafty catering that depended upon, especially when they're doing it on studio sets, but even on the popular on location places in around the United States, are feeling the effect because shooting is starting to slow down in the major areas. Prop houses and gear rental houses, when studios slow down, then they logically don't need as much equipment, and that either in props or in cinematography or lighting equipment. And various support services. Randy, you had some examples. Off the top of my head, I
There's
can't.
tons of them. When you're
Yeah.
talking about cleaners, hotels, lumber yards, grocery stores, anything that you do and go to, all the restaurants, so film and television for most locations like Orlando or Atlanta, or even LA to a certain extent, is considered to be what's known as a clean industry. You don't have to build a lot of infrastructure. So, I just read an interesting article about how the film production in Oklahoma was being affected. But that's what happens. The film crew comes in, and then, it's I just lost everybody here. Film crew comes in, and they stay at local hotels, they eat at local restaurants, they go to local stores, they buy lumber, they buy materials to build and stuff with, and cleaners. So it's a wide-reaching thing. And so when you look at film incentive programs, this is an important concept to kind of understand. A lot of politicians, and especially here in Florida, that's why Florida is different from Georgia right now, is that the Florida politicians think of the film incentive program as a special interest group. Okay. And so the problem with that is most special interests, don't return money on the dollar. The film industry does. It's been proven that here in Florida, it returns 3 times the amount that's put into the incentive program. So that's because it goes out to all these ancillary and support services. So it's a really important concept to understand how that affects everybody.
And it's also important to note that these strikes are not close to being closed. And due to the existential nature of both parties wanting to get and keep their piece of the pie, and some groups, their actual careers are on the line here. Both groups are going to be fighting tooth and nail, so I don't see this ending, either one ending soon. And so what sort of opportunities, discounting the affected industries, what sort of other opportunities would be for cinematographers that maybe are just about to graduate? What can they do outside of, and not avoid, but thrive and thrive in this type of era?
Want me to jump in there? So,
Sure. Either
so
you or Jonah is great.
one of the things that if you've gone through my class, you hear me say this all the time, that this is an incredible time to be in this industry, just an incredible time. And, one of the things that you need to know is, like Gio was talking about, that the film and television industry that this affects, this was network and cable television and, studio films and streamers. Those are the big people that it really affects. The rest of us, all these other vertical markets, and we talk about vertical markets, we're talking about there's a whole variety of vertical markets out there that all of you guys will be working in, and that includes local and regional television, for example, or if you want to look at the corporate world or the medical world or DoD. There's event videography. There's all the internet stuff that's going on. So there's just all these other jobs that are out there in these vertical markets that aren't really being affected by the strike. And so that creates some opportunity, because the need for content goes on. That's the thing that you have to understand. And so that's why you're looking at people like Jeopardy, who are rerunning all the clues from the past. And there's some record, I forget what the number was, I was just looking at it the other day. There are now 38 hours of reality television on network television. 30 per week, 38 hours of network television, reality television. There's been a big rise. And if you haven't noticed, they've been sneaking in foreign productions as new productions into, like, for the streamers and stuff. So there's all these interesting ways that they're trying to, repurpose programming. It's called recombinant programming, to make up for the need, because people, I was just talking to my wife about this the other day. Is like, God, do I even want to keep Netflix anymore? Because it's, there's just not enough new programming coming out that I want to see. And so that's what's happening. But you guys have an opportunity to create all kinds of, content across all these vertical markets that, is opening up a whole new, area for you guys to go into. One of the things that you should know is that there is some, all the people who were in, the film and television industries that are affected by the strike, especially the below the line people, the workers, they're all jumping into these other vertical markets as well. So that's one of the drawbacks to this. The market just got a little bit more crowded, but if you stake your claim in those markets and you're good at those markets, it's not as easy for somebody who's a DP on a feature film to want to jump in and do a corporate video. It's kind of a different mindset than that. So there's some pros and cons to be had there on how it's going to affect you guys.
Yeah, I would kind of, rubber stamp what Randy just said. I had a producer tell me at Disney about 25, 6 years ago, that it's a great time to get in this industry, like Randy just said, because with all the different platforms for content between streaming, online, internet, and just everywhere. Everybody needs video content, and so he called it a beast we can't feed enough. So in some ways, it's opened the gate wider for people to get in. And I was thinking, as Randy was speaking about this unscripted television, even beyond reality, you also have if you notice, you'll see a uptick in the number of documentaries that are being released on especially Netflix and Hulu that are any topic you can think of. And a lot of them are even foreign documentaries. So the rush to release documentaries has increased to where projects, I was reading that they were saying documentary projects are being even greenlit more or being purchased more easily now and readily now because they have that need for the content that wasn't maybe controlled by this strike with the writers and the actors. So again, it's just I do a lot of corporate work and documentary work and promotional work, not because I don't want to work in features, but more because of the market that I am in, where I live and where I've kind of, like Randy said, staked my claim at. So it pays my bills. So there's a lot of work out there still available for content creators in general and what we all do here. I would love to see this end, but there's still plenty out there. I guess I started hearing today about the rush of those people now, from who maybe work in Hollywood and television and feature films only, trying to get into the other corporate work and industrial work. And I guess that could be a issue in certain markets, but a lot of us who don't live in those big city and those New York, LA markets and the Georgia markets, that's still there for us.
Yeah, and in many ways, I mean, I think it's been mentioned before in a lot of ways of if your pursuit is independent narrative films, you're going to need to support that with something else anyway. If you're the one, unless you got an angel investor. So, and a lot of people are making that dream a reality. And so it's kind of already happening of these people that might do narratives in Hollywood on the side may do some, this and that anyway.
So, we joke about it a lot. Anybody who's worked in the industry for a while, especially if you worked on feature films or television shows, we talk about the glamour of television. People go, "Oh, you're working film and television. It must be so glamorous." Yeah, the 12-hour days out in the heat, and for not a lot of great money. And so, anybody have any idea how much an average below the line person makes in LA? Just anybody have a guess how much they make? I was shocked. Yeah.
You mean per day or per year?
Per year.
43.
Yeah, close. Yeah. In 2021, it was 46,960. Los Angeles KTLA said that 80% of the union's card-carrying members make less than $26,000 per year, which is the benefit threshold needed to meet the qualify for the union's healthcare plan. So it's kind of crazy. The annual poverty line is 36,900 in Hollywood for a family of four. Anybody know how much Bob Iger made last year at Disney? $27 million. And so. And so it's one of those things that when you look at, it's like, okay, if you're a Roger Deakins or a Chivo or somebody like that is a well-known DP, then you're making some big bucks, But if you're most of the below the line staff out there, it's a struggle. And especially if you live in LA, that's why people fled out of LA and they came here to Orlando in the 90s, because they thought, oh, this is, cost of living is so much lower. I can actually afford a house. And that's what happened in Atlanta. That's why Atlanta took off, plus the tax incentives and tax credits. So it's a different ball game out there. And people used to say to me all the time, especially working in a lot of television shows, and I would go back and do corporate videos, and they would say, "Why do you do corporate videos?" And I was like, "It pays so much better than television, and the clients are so much more appreciative." I
And
finished.
frankly, more work. There's more work, right?
Yeah. I
Randy?
finish a television show and I get a T-shirt. I finish a big corporate job and they take me out to dinner and they lavish you with gifts and they're like, thank you so much. And they're very, that never happens in television. They're like, okay, see you guys, next show. So it's a different mindset. That's like we joke about it, the glamour of television. It's out there.
Wonderful. Does anybody have any questions thus far? Trying to look back through the chat.
New messages here.
So yeah, if you have any questions so far, please use the chat and we will get your questions answered.
If you're
Great
an
question.
editor, you can work anywhere. Editors in such demand. If you're a good editor, man, you can write your own ticket.
Yeah,
especially now in any unscripted, especially reality and documentary, there's plenty of editing work. And even just for promo work or people who create content online, even I've noticed even the user generated content on TikTok and Instagram, even though it's appears to be, they try to make it seem user generated, like by maybe it was shot with an iPhone or a tablet. However, I know that they're still hiring professional editors sometimes to do it for them. Even the user generated people who are very busy, just sometimes it takes too much of their time to be an editor. And what you can edit because you've been practicing and doing it so much and gotten fast and efficient. I have clients that give me work because it takes them 2 days to do what I could do in 2 or 3 hours. So for an editors, yeah, we're all in good shape. And majority of my work is editing, by the way. That's the bulk of my bread and butter. So yeah, editing has been pretty steady.
Yeah, even when they're coming to you with content like, oh, I shot this thing on Instagram, this silly stuff, they might still need intros, outros, all sorts of stuff where they're even some sort of an AI editor or iMovie's magic, whatever. It still won't do a professional enough job if they're working even slightly outside of that cookie cutter thing.
Yes.
So yeah, editors, yeah, really, if anything, I've seen more work for editors.
So the funny thing is, I wish I had kept it. Somebody sent a friend of mine, Roger Jacobson, who is a big editor up in New York in Manhattan, sent me a thing recently from the Village Voice that said editor wanted, and it said must be able to write, shoot, produce, edit, do graphics, understand how to edit music. So if you're an editor, you got to kind of know how to do it all. And honestly, most great editors are good producers. You would be surprised at how many editors save really bad, projects. It's flabbergasting how much, because you have all these people who don't understand the shot sequence rules and editing rules and stuff, and they just dump all this footage on an editor and say, hey, put this together for me and make it look great. So it's a different mindset these days with editors.
So is editing going to go AI? I mean, my prediction is yes and no. Yes and no, because I think that yes, we have our structures in place for editing. We have our rules, our ground rules for editing. But I think that narrative, like truly innovative feature films, stuff like that, that use a specific cinematic style or a director's preference or stuff like that, people are still going to want to get into the weeds and we'll call it editing purists rather than depending on AI, because AI is going to be great for cookie cutter stuff. But for tweaking, I'm not sure. But what's everybody else's opinion on editing and AI?
I was thinking about that today, actually. I don't think it's already there, between, if you ever used a software that automatically syncs your audio, your dialogue, or use the tools where it'll re-edit your music down to the exact length you need and automatically do the cut to make it seem seamless. I think you're going to have those tools, which are in fact fantastic and save a lot of time. Just don't show your clients because you don't want them knowing how easily you can do it. However, it's not going to replace you. I don't think it can replace an editor. I think it can be beneficial to an editor, but not replace him or her when it's time to go through those those notes and revisions, or just because it needs to feel, a project needs to breathe and feel alive. Only a human can do that, I believe.
I can't agree more. If you open up your Adobe Creative Cloud and look at any of the beta software for Photoshop and Lightroom and Illustrator and After Effects, it's all AI, based, so it's already there. And so, yeah, I use AI all the time. And by the way, we're doing next month's DCB Buzz is on AI and how it's, what it is and where it's going in the industry and how you need to, embrace it. But you'll see it. There's gonna be different layers of this, and we've seen it. It's very cyclical in the industry already. We've seen this in the industry. If you look at, Avid, Avid's a prime example of that. They had actually Final Cut Pro, I should say, was a better example of that. And so you had Final Cut Pro, which was this professional editing system, and then you had iMovie, which was a kind of consumer that was a little bit more, easier to use. Okay. And then they came out and said, oh, we're going to do Final Cut Pro 10, and then we're going to combine those things and make everything more easier for, the average person to be able to edit. And of course, all the professional editors, like, Final Cut Pro took a backseat to Premiere Pro at that point. So, you're going to see probably, Final Cut Pro and Adobe you put a little bit more effort and thought into things like Rush and light versions of that for everybody that are going to be a little bit more heavily laden with AI. But if you read books like A Blink of the Eye, the Walter Murch book on editing, it's really, you're not going to get, the AI can't do emotion. AI can't recognize emotion, and that's, it can tell a story, as boilerplate. And again, it's basically what you put into AI, what the database is that the AI is drawing from, that does that. Now, does that mean once we get into quantum computing down the road, will that change? Probably, but we're 20 years away from that, but right now there's, you have to have that human person sitting behind a desk making those decisions. It's, frame here, frame there. It's totally different.
Cool. Are some productions still going through agreeing to the new terms? Well, not exactly sure what, like there are no new terms yet, but like feature films have long lead times, multi-year lead times. And there are, at least AMC was reporting earlier in the week that they think they're going to be okay in the near term because so many things were already in the can before these came up, because I mean, things need to be scheduled years in advance. And so they might already have all the resources to put together. And hopefully the editors union doesn't also strike. So yeah, I also depends on the industry. Television is a little bit more short time frames. I mean, Jeopardy is always already running into a changing gears. But the longer it lasts, the more the more sea changes will be able to be made into more reality show, more documentary, more things that are outside the auspices of actors, or like, actors either part-time or full-time, and writers of narrative things. So anything outside of that is going to be really attractive to studios.
So you have to realize that writers didn't stop writing. They're still writing.
Oh no, yeah.
They're still, they're, in television, or in our industry, we have development, pre-production, production, post-production, distribution. Okay. The development process is still going on pretty heavily in Hollywood. So all the studios are taking advantage of this time to go out there and start looking at old scripts. And, are there deals probably going under the table where they're having writers come in and off the books and stuff and write in development mode? Yeah, probably. But, that's kind of a fine line, because if the union finds out about that it kind of will be blackballed, those writers and people. But even the unions, both SAG and WGA, have things that you can do for certain levels of production. They will give you passes. I think they call it interim production. So there's still some stuff going on even with the unions. It hasn't shut down 100%, but there's still a ton of writing going on. Anybody know how many what percentage of actors in LA are on unemployment?
90%.
90%. That's exactly
Oh,
right.
oh, really? Oh, wow.
90%.
Okay.
Yeah. 90% of actors are in LA file unemployment. So it's, yeah. And so that's because you don't, if any of you watch the movie Extras or the series Extras, I have friends that are extras. I have friends that are, that live in LA that are actresses that do commercial stuff. And they probably make more money than most people because they get all the residuals every time the commercial airs. But I have friends that are extras, and they're just barely getting by. So this kind of thing will really hurt them, and they're all going out and getting other jobs, obviously. But it's for most people in LA and big cities like that, Atlanta, if you're tied into the film industry and the TV industry only, then yeah, it hurts. And so that's a lesson about not putting all your eggs in one basket, being versatile and being flexible as well. Somebody asked about what the major nonlinear editing systems were in Hollywood. There's four major nonlinear editing systems. There's Avid, who was just recently bought by an investment firm. And there's Final Cut Pro from Apple. There's DaVinci Resolve from Blackmagic, and there is Premiere Pro from Adobe. And so if you've been in the industry as long as I have, and you've seen it's cyclical, who's number one. Avid had 85% of the marketplace, and then they had this huge marketing blunder where they said, we're not going to support Macintoshes anymore, we're just going PC. Final Cut Pro was waiting. Apple was waiting with Final Cut Pro in the wings, and they stepped in and became number one for about 10 years. And then they had that whole marketing, boondoggle where they said, oh, we're going to, they hired the guy who did, iMovie, and said he's going to remake Final Cut Pro to make it more usable. And I think 100,000 editors signed a petition worldwide saying that Final Cut Pro was not a professional editing system anymore. So Premiere Pro, which was considered to be a prosumer, nonlinear editing, was waiting in the wings, and they stepped in and became the number one nonlinear editing. And they're still the number one nonlinear editing, but Blackmagic, DaVinci Resolve is nipping at their heels. And you have to understand kind of what's going on here. Okay, so nobody can compete with Adobe because of Creative Cloud. You get Creative Cloud, you get Premiere Pro, you get Lumetri, you get Illustrator, you get After Effects, you get Photoshop, you get Lightroom, you get InDesign. The list goes on and on. Nobody's been able to do that, except for the guy from Blackmagic who said, okay, I'll take you on. And so he dumped millions of dollars into his nonlinear editing system. He already had the number one color correction software in the world that most motion pictures are done with. So he spent millions of dollars in his nonlinear editing system, getting it up to the par where a lot of people think it's better than Premiere Pro now. And he did the same thing with audio. He bought a huge, giant audio post-production company and incorporated it in Blackmagic. And he did the same thing with 2D and 3D graphics. And he actually made, Adobe quiver for a moment there. Adobe went out and bought Frame.io in response to the collaboration software that Blackmagic already had. So you're seeing those two powerhouses going to battle it out. You're going to see, with Avid being sold recently, that's not a good sign. And then Apple isn't putting the type of resources it needs into Final Cut Pro to make that again. I have friends that are some of the top editors in the United States who will tell you that Final Cut Pro is probably the most powerful nonlinear editing system out there. But with all the new advances right now that you're seeing in Adobe and Blackmagic, those are the two. And, our philosophy here, by the way, at DCBS is that, even though we're an Adobe Sony house primarily, we think you should be learning two different nonlinear editing systems if you're going to be an editor. And I say this to editors all the time. You got to know two. And that would, for me, that would be Premiere Pro and Blackmagic. And the reason I say Blackmagic is because of the color correction software, but also because it's a node-based editing system. Okay. So it's a little bit different from Avid Premiere and Final Cut Pro, the way that you edit on that. So there's a little bit of learning curve, but once you get used to that, it will make you a better editor, I think, knowing both of those things. Sorry, it's just one of my pet peeve things about editors and editing. I get off on a rant.
Well, we definitely don't ever want to say, have a Full Sail student or graduate go to a job and then say, oh, well, we use this. We don't ever want them to say, sorry, I don't do that. We want to be as agnostic enough, have you learned the fundamentals enough so you might be able to, at the very least, fake it till you make it, although we don't recommend that. We definitely don't want you saying, sorry, I don't do that.
I stay up with, just I try to learn. I mean, I'm going to specialize in Premiere. I'll say that now in Adobe, but I started with Adobe 3 back in the 90s. Went to school. When I went to college, I learned Avid. Then, because I couldn't afford a $30,000 Avid when I got out of school, I went back to. I somehow ended up on Final Cut. And stayed with Final Cut from like 5 till 7, and then switch until the whole thing when they changed it to be more like iMovie. And now I'm back on Premiere. But my point is, I kind of follow it and try to be comfortable in all of them. If you're going to put me on a time schedule, I'm going to do it on Premiere because I'll be faster. But I can pull it off in Avid, and I can pull it off in DaVinci. I'm trying to get more efficient with DaVinci now because I'm starting to dig its interface. So I think you should be like bilingual, trilingual. Like, I think it'll benefit you in this field. I saw someone said something about Avid being necessary in television. I have a producer friend in LA who's a development. She told me the same thing. The episodic tends to be in LA, you have to be on Avid, but we'll see how long that really matters too. If you're independent editor working from your own home studio, I don't see why it would even matter unless you're going to work out of his post house.
Yeah.
Yeah. So remember, Avid had 80% of the marketplace at one point. 80%. They're less than 12% of the marketplace now. So.
Yeah.
Cool. So Joe says he's doing work in some weddings and some YouTube work, but ideally he'd like to work into more narratives. What is some things that he can do now to prepare himself while this whole situation is going on?
Keep shooting.
Yeah. I went to a workshop with Steven Spielberg one time, and it was kind of interesting. And so it was kind of like our Full Sail big conference room thing and auditorium. And he did a Q&A at the end, and this young film student stood up and said, what does it take to be a director? And he said, well, do you want to be a director? And he said, yes. And he goes, are you directing films now, short films and stuff? And the kid said yes, and he goes, that's what it takes. You're a director, So it's just a matter of going out there and doing narrative stuff. Now you have to learn. There's a whole different mindset in doing narrative versus doing TV or things like that. Everything's a formula. You just have to understand that there is a formula for doing things. A format, if you will, like feature films are formatted a specific way. Television shows are formatted a specific way. Documentaries are kind of have a format, and there are different versions of those and variations of those. But you have to kind of learn that, format of what that is. And for narrative filmmaking, you're getting more into things like the shot sequence rules and things that you wouldn't normally use if you're doing a music video or a YouTube video. So those are the types of things that you need to kind of embrace and learn. Do you know what I mean by shot sequence rules? Anybody?
Is it like over the shoulder, then the reverse shot, stuff like that?
Well, that's a shot type. Okay. So shot sequence rules, most of what we do, and quite honestly, this is a really good question because almost everything we teach here in DCBS is based on what's known as the Hollywood continuity editing system. And that system is really a simple concept that once you get an audience, a viewer into a story, you want to keep them in that story. You don't want to take them out of that story. So, that continuity editing system does that. So if you're watching a film and all of a sudden you see a boom mic come down into the shot, you go, oh, it's a boom mic. It took you completely out of the story. If you're watching a story and you see the camera jiggle like this unexpectedly, that takes you out of the story. So we want the filmmaking process, the visual storytelling process to be invisible. Okay, that's the basis of the craft of visual storytelling. You just have to know that. So there are rules that go along with that, okay, that you do in production, but you use in post-production, okay? And some of those rules are like establishing a location. So if you look at any feature film or you look at any television show, usually one of the first shots you see, if not the first shot you see, is a wide shot. Why is that? Because it establishes who's in the scene, where it's taking place, what the time of day is, what the weather is, all that stuff, and the relationship between everybody and every object in that scene. So when you start cutting to close-ups and medium close-ups, the audience knows where that's at. If you don't do that, you confuse the audience. Now you can use that to your advantage. Like if you want to confuse the audience, if you watch a lot of cop shows and you come back from a commercial break, they may cut to a couple close-up or medium close-up shots where you don't know where you're at or who's doing what, but within 3 or 4 shots they cut back out to that. Now there are a lot of other ones that you probably know. The 180-degree camera line. You want to stay on the camera line so that your eye lines are matching. But things like clean entrances and clean exits and reverse shots and the 30-20 rule. And, there's just a lot of different little things that you do in production. You try to, make sure you do those in production. So when you get back into post, it makes post much easier. Anybody know what the 30-20 rule is? That's an old Hollywood rule that is not taught very much these days anymore. But it's anytime you're doing a shot sequence, most editors will tell you that if you're telling the story, you need 3 shots. Okay. Anybody know what those shots are? Wide shot, medium shot, close up. That's it. And so, but it doesn't have to be a wide shot, medium shot, close up. It needs to be a shot wide enough where you establish that location, who, what, when, where, everybody that's in it, the kind of geographic location of everything within the frame. And then the medium shot, and the medium shot is all about, how those people and objects within that frame are interacting with each other. And then the close-up shot. And the close-up shot is either showing you a detail about an important story element, or it's telling you how a person is feeling internally about what's going on around them. Okay. So you need 3 shots that do that. This is such an important concept. It's called a shot sequence that the BBC, every reporter for the BBC has to go through training where they teach them a 5-shot sequence. I've worked with the BBC on teaching reporters and stuff this. Their other 2 shots are like POV or over the shoulder or interesting angle. That's 1 shot. And they always want to see a close-up of a face, always a close-up of a face. And so those are all shot sequence rules and things that you need to know, like, with the shot type, for example, you were mentioning all these shot types. Did you know that every time you move forward and the closer you get on a shot, the more emotion should be in the shot? And when you jump from a medium shot to a medium close-up, you're jumping what's called the line of intimacy, where on the medium shot, you can look at a person and tell how they're feeling by their body language and facial expressions. But when you go to a medium close-up, now you can look at their eyes and tell how they're feeling internally. That's what we talk about, a close-up and a medium close-up, and extreme close-ups, all about telling how that person is feeling internally about what's going on around them. So all those are rules that you need to know if you're going to do narrative filmmaking. Do you need to know that if you're doing a YouTube video or a music video? Probably not, So that's what I mean when I talk about you have to know the format and style of what you're shooting. Yeah, Joe was right. To avoid a jump cut, that's a 30-20 rule.
Yes.
Helps you avoid the 30-20 rule, by the way, is every time you go from those 3 shots, you change the camera angle by 30 degrees, not more than about 30 to 60 degrees, and you change the focal length by 20 to 60 millimeters. You don't want to change it by more than 60 millimeters because then it becomes a jump cut. And again, that jump cut takes the audience out of the story, unless you want to take the audience out of the story, like that great shot from Psycho where the shower curtain, white shot of the shower curtain opens up and the extreme close up of the hand comes down. That scared the hell out of people, and that was called a jump cut or a crash edit. And so that's an instance of where you would use that difference between, you know, a wide shot and a close up to, you know, elicit a specific emotion from a viewer.
Awesome. Great questions thus far.
So what kind of vertical markets are you guys working in right now? So we saw some people said weddings and anybody doing any commercial stuff. And I just have to tell you, you don't have to be in a big market to take advantage of what's going on right now. You know, I have friends that live in a small, medium-sized town. It's like 40,000 people in Iowa. Music videos and commercials, social media campaigns. Yeah, he's making a living for his family. He's got 2 kids and a wife, and he's the sole provider for them. And he makes a living by doing short internet videos for local businesses. You know,
I was just about to say that one.
that's what he does, you know, and he doesn't make, you know, a ton of money, but he'll charge a client $2,000 and he can do one in about 3 days. So if he has 2 of them booked a week, he's, you know, he's bringing in like $4,000 a week. That's not a bad living if you're living in the middle of Iowa, you know, with the cost of living so low. So, and he is really enjoying it. He's getting to know the entire town and all the people. And, you know, of course, he's branching out into little communities outside his, but, you know, he's telling these, and the stories that he's telling, they're not like, you know, your average little, you know, internet videos. They tell a story and they have a heart and they evoke emotion, you know, so it's really cool. So
Randy, I'm sorry, I wanted to, about what you're just talking about. When I first started, well, after school, I was at Nickelodeon. Then I worked for a production company for a couple of years. But when I first went freelance or independent, that's what I did. My business was doing those small business videos, and I did about 300 or 400 of them in a period about maybe 3 or 4 years, starting my career. The beauty of it, I'll tell you folks, is that's what made me fast as a shooter and especially as an editor, because I wasn't making a ton of money and I figured I had to do it within 5 to 6 hours of total time in order for it to be good money. So I got really fast at walking on location and sometimes sight unseen and figure out what shots I need to get, know where I'm going to do my interview, and coming back and cutting this 62-minute internet video for this local business and have it delivered to them within 48 hours. Like I said, it wasn't the most glamorous thing, but that's why I'm so fast as an editor now. And even as a shooter, it really made me proficient at my skill. So I recommend anybody, once you finish our program, that's a great way to get practice and get good at what you're doing and using your camera, using your computers every day. And getting to know and just making contacts too. A lot of those jobs turned into bigger like TV commercials or corporate jobs. But that was the best 4 or 5 years, you know, for my career. I highly recommend that.
I couldn't agree more. You know, Randy Schaefer and I talk about this all the time. We grew up in news. We started as news shooters. So as a news shooter, you get to know how to do that. But here's what you need to understand. There's not many people like Jonah. You know, there are not many people that can go out there and write and produce and shoot and edit their own stuff. It's just, you know, that's what we're training you how to do. And there's not many people who can do that. I mean, and you should look at other students, what they're doing out there. You know, if you're not on my CBD Facebook page, jump on there, but, you know, get to know people like Susan, you know, Susan Graham, you know, who lives in Jamaica. If you haven't seen her stuff, she's a lot like Jonah. She's also an on-camera, you know, spokesperson as well. So, and she's killing it down there. You know, it's incredible. But, you know, when you're starting out, take the time while you're in school here to be flexible and do other things, do lots of different types of shows. Don't get pigeonholed into something right now. If you are passionate about if you want to do music videos, then try to do music videos, but also look at doing short films and little it's called lifestyle internet videos, these little 30-second to 1 minute, 2 minute lifestyle internet videos. For me, those are really the cool things. But look at all the vertical markets, like the wedding. If you haven't ever done a wedding, I don't like doing weddings, but I have friends that do weddings, and they are not like your typical wedding videographer. Husband and wife team, she shoots stills, he shoots video, but they tell these incredible stories. I mean, you watch their videos and it's like watching a short film, a wedding video. So, and they're always calling me and saying, hey, if you have any good people that are, can come out and help us, let us know. We're always looking for good people. So what you need to know is that having that camera that you have is going to open up huge amounts of doors for you. Being able to go out and say to somebody, I have an FX6 camera. And so even if we tell this story a couple times now, even if we had a couple students in the last couple of months who got on as PAs on a feature film in their town, they went out and knew their feature film was shooting, and they, contacted the production managers, and they were basically office runners. They were just runners. And I said to them, look, go to find the production manager or the production coordinator and tell them, I got an FX6 camera package and I can shoot behind the scenes footage. Within the very next day that each of those went to them, 2 different films altogether, they called me both and said, hey, I got a job shooting the behind the scenes stuff for the feature. And so now they went from being a production PA to shooting these behind the scenes, because every television show, every feature films needs behind the scenes footage, but they don't usually budget for it. So it's one of those things where the network or the studio require, but they don't really. But Trevor, sorry, you've had your hand raised for a while. You have a question?
Yes, sir. It's okay. You don't have to apologize. Not to stray off of what you were talking about. Great points. Great information. I was just curious about the writer strike. I was trying to see if you touched on that already. I came in kind of late. But like with the advancement of technology, will that pose an issue for us as upcoming camera workers, or will it go hand in hand?
Well, yeah, we kind of touched on the WGA stuff, but what I can tell you is next month's DC Buzz is all about AI, and we're gonna go take a deep dive into all that. But it's like we talked about the WGA. That's one of the writers' fears, is that that's going to take over. I think there's a whole bigger issue there about the legal aspects of that and where that's going to go. There's just some things that just came out in the last week saying that AI generated artwork can't be copyrighted. That opens up a whole can of worms in itself. But look at the AI meeting we're going to do next month. The writer strike and the SAG strike, what we talked about at the beginning of this, is really affecting the motion picture industry and the television industry, cable and network television, and studio and streaming films. All the other vertical markets that you guys are working in right now, not really going to affect it that much. But AI is one of the big issues in both of those things. And you're seeing studios do that. I sent Gio an article from No Film School, actually, that talked about how one of the studios in LA were hiring day player actors to come in, and they'd bring them in and they were scanning their entire body, and then so that they can use them as background players down the road as AI. So they're paying them for one day. And so that's what the writer's strike is all about. The actor strike is all about, and, then the WGA strike is they just want to make a living wage. You think that they're making all this great money. And so if you're a head writer on a big TV show, you're probably doing okay, but all the other people are kind of struggling.
Oh, I appreciate it.
If you think about the you mentioned Suits earlier in the beginning, that show, and I'm one of the people who just started catching on to that show. I didn't watch it when it was on air, and now that it's on Netflix and has been everyone's talking about on social media. I'm addicted to the show, but they're saying billions and billions of streams, and that show's been off for years. And now the streamers and whoever was paid for that distribution of that is probably making a ton of money or value out of that. And those actors and writers aren't getting anything but those pennies. It's like the show has been brought back to life bigger than it was before, and none of them are getting paid for that. So I already supported the writers and the actors, but that really made me understand where they're coming from because of stream.
But for you guys, and this is what the meeting next month is going to be all about, you need to embrace AI. AI is not going away. It's going to continue to grow. And so you need to learn how to use it as a tool. And I do it constantly. And it's pretty amazing if you know how to use it correctly. You have to be careful. But I just wrote a script, for example, that I really didn't want to do. But I had all the information. I gathered all the information that I wanted in the script. And then I went into an AI program, a script writing AI program, and I put it in there. And I put different versions of how I wanted to see it. So I said, write a 3-minute script based on this. And then I said, write a 5-minute script based on these things. And I took them individually and said, write a 2-minute part of a script for this different thing. And then I said, okay, write this with a on-talent narrator, and then write this as just voiceover. And so I was able to hand the client in a day 10 different versions of a script, that he could look at. And I said, just pick and choose what you want, and then I'll go back through and rewrite the entire thing all over again. But it was what I put into it. It wasn't using outside resources to bring all that stuff together. It was what I was feeding it, the information I was feeding it. So that's really important. So you got to learn how to use that. And we did the May the 4th, spoof video here on the virtual stage a couple months ago. And so I was storyboarding out. I had one night to storyboard the thing out. They were like, "Oh, can you storyboard this tonight for the shoot tomorrow?" So yeah. So I was having problems. So I went to AI and used AI to create a lot of the storyboards for the storyboards, and it worked surprisingly well. So there's lots of different ways. And then of course, all the things that you're going to see kind of, Photoshop, After Effects, Lightroom, all that stuff is coming in with some AI, plus all the stock footage stuff now. If you haven't looked at AI and stock footage, especially for search engines and stuff like that, and then all the music creations. And so it's pretty crazy. I saw somebody take a piece of music, and this is where it gets a little scary. That was pretty good. And they said, write 10 different versions of this piece of music based, with the same kind of feeling. And within a minute, AI wrote 10 different versions of that. And then I think it was in a staff meeting with Gio and those guys where you guys did, okay, write a 30-second commercial about a lawn mowing company, and then create a logo for that lawn mowing company,
Yep.
and bang, 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 it, did it, and so that doesn't mean, it's like I say to people all the time, when you do that kind of stuff, that doesn't mean that's what you're going to use, but that gives you a starting point to jump off from, and so that does a lot of the heavy lifting for you, so that hopefully then you could put more of your effort and time into the creative aspect of shaping and molding that script to tell the story and evoke an emotion.
Cool. How do we feel about doing spec ads in your downtime in order to try new things?
Yep.
Even if they're like unpaid, even if they're unasked for, like a Coke commercial.
At the very least, that's great. It's great practice. And at the very least, you have it's portfolio piece, right?
My concept is you should be shooting all the time. It's a numbers game, guys. It's a numbers game. How many times can you pick up the camera and shoot something and edit it together? So there's lots of great stories on this. And I judge a lot of film festivals, and there's one going on this weekend called the Fusion Fest, and they have 48 hours. It's kind of like the 48-hour film festival. They show up and they're giving a name of a person. And then they have 48 hours to create a film based on that person and where they came from and how they, are spending their life here in Central Florida and changing things. And so it's pretty cool. And so they put together crews, and there's things like that going on all the time. There used to be, there still is, there's a monitor company called Small HD that makes these really cool monitors. If you're in the industry, you know their little monitor, Small HD. The company was started because they did the Cheeto commercial, the contest. They went out and did a spec Cheeto commercial and won $1 million from the Cheeto commercial and invested that money into their little monitor company, which they sold for $200 million like 5 years later. So there, three guys just, bought big farms up in North Carolina, and they literally were running the whole monitor thing out of a barn in North Carolina. So there's lots of stories like that. But I'm constantly telling people, go out and volunteer. If you don't know about filmmaking meetup groups or model mania and stuff, and it's not just going out and shooting video. Learn how to shoot stills as well. Go out, and shoot stills. And if you're shooting video, make sure you're shooting great looking behind the scenes stills as you're doing that, because those are just as important as the stuff that you're doing. When you go out and do a project, you're not just doing the project. There's all these other ancillary pieces that you need, deliverables that include behind the scenes and stills and all that stuff. So make sure that you're really good at using that and taking those images, because you can use those in your social media to help promote yourself. And if you've gone through my class, the whole concept here about, it's like Jonah was saying, we call it feeding the monster. Okay, as you go through the degree program, hopefully you're getting a larger and larger and larger social media network. You're branding yourself. You're figuring out who you are and what you want people to know as. And so we teach you in my class how to post 3 times a week to keep yourself in front of people, but to do it so that what you're posting is engaging to the people that you're seeing. And one of those things is every Wednesday, you should be posting a behind the scenes shot of you shooting something, or a shot of a clip or something of something that you're working on. And this comes from, and I can never remember the guy's name, wrote a great book called Mastery, which if you take a master's class here at Full Sail, it's the first class every student takes.
Robert Greene, I think.
Robert Greene, yeah, I know. I've got a couple of his other books, but
Yeah,
in
they're
that,
fantastic.
it's a really great book. It's about finding your passion in life. And one of the things in there is about creating your online persona. And he uses a mixture of old historical figures and new modern figures. And in this one, he tells the story about a robotic arm creator in Miami who was having problems being accepted in the industry because she was a woman. So she created this great online site where she didn't mention at all she was a woman, and it got to be well known, and then came out that she was the one behind it. But his philosophy is that, if you post something every week religiously to feeding that monster, again, then people, after a month, people are going to go, wow. You'll hear them say this, and we have lots of students who tell me this. You'll hear them say this, wow, you're really busy. After 2 months of doing that, people are going to go, wow, I don't know what you're doing, but you're hitting it out of the ballpark here. You're really doing a great job here. After 3 months of that, they're going, something's going on with that person. I need to either be hiring them or working with that person. So it's this online persona that you're creating. So little things like, learning how to shoot great behind the scenes stills, feed into all that, no matter what you're doing. Adam's got a question.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious, because this has been coming up for me and some of the people that I brew with regularly here in Houston, with all the talk of like the vertical markets and stuff. I'm just wondering what advice or resources y'all might point us towards for figuring out what to charge or bid for stuff, because that's something that, at least in my experience here in Houston, it's been really hard to get like a direct answer from people who have like a year or two of experience doing cinematography. Like, hey, what did you charge as your day rate for that commercial? And they're like, oh, well, I negotiated with them, blah, blah, blah. And they won't give a direct answer. People who've been doing this for 10 years are happy to tell me what they're making now, but that's not really, the 10-year fee isn't super relevant to like me. I'm graduating this month. So I'm just wondering like what resources you all might point us to help us. Obviously, the answer is different depending on where we are. Yeah.
So two resources right off the bat you should check out. Number one is, well, three that it will give you. One is called No Film School. It's funny, the guy who started No Film School, young kid, he was 21 when he started it, and he just got out of film school, surprisingly enough. And so just last month, No Film School announced that they were doing film courses. So it's kind of, but they have a couple great articles on there about what to charge. Okay, and then the other great resource that you need to know, everybody needs to know if you're a videographer, is Video Maker Magazine, Video Maker Online. They have multiple, articles on there about, what to charge as you're first starting out. And then if there's also, God, I can't remember the name. I'll try to send it to you once I find it. It lists all the rates of a 2-person camera crew in major cities throughout the United States. So the key here is you got to start trying to get out of that mindset of day rates. Okay, it's easy to fall into because the money's really good. I can tell you that on an average, a professional camera guy is going to make between $400-$600 a day doing corporate and convention and event videography stuff. That goes up if you're doing reality is about the same. If you do commercial production, that jumps up to $600 to $1,000 a day. And if you're doing feature films, it depends on what you're doing and what level you're at, and that varies. It could be $400 a day as an operator or $500 a day, and it depends on whether or not you're union or non-union. We're a right to work state here, so it differs. So what I can tell you about this is it really depends on how hungry you are. Okay, that's it. So if you're starting out and you're wanting to learn, and you haven't done something and somebody wants to hire you that you haven't done, you're probably going to be, if you're good, you're going to talk to them and say, look, I haven't really done this before, but I'll give you a break on the price on this because I'm going to be learning as we do this. People appreciate that. They appreciate the honesty. And if you're especially if they've come to you, if you're out there trying to sell yourself as a professional, then that's probably not the way to go. But if they're coming to you asking you to do a project, then that's it. And it's the number one thing that people don't want to talk about. So if you talk to other production companies, they're not going to tell you what they charge because you're competition for them, So the best way to do that is just, you're in Houston. I would tell you one of the things I would recommend, a great resource for you in Houston, is go join Women in Film and Television. And I know you're a dude, but hear me out here. There's lots of men in there, and so I was on the board of Women in Film and Television here in Orlando for probably 15 years. It's usually especially I know in Houston it is this way. If you go in and look at the board members on Women in Film, these are the movers and shakers in Houston, and there are a lot of production managers and there are a lot of production coordinators that are in there. Those are the people, if you want to figure out what people are getting paid, talk to those people. They know that's their job. They're the ones who pay them. They're the ones who negotiate the rates. So find yourself some good production managers and production coordinators and befriend those people and talk to them. And a good way to do that is to join Women in Film. They have social events multiple times a month in Houston, where you can go out and have drinks with people, and go and meet those people and do your homework, do the research, know who the members are, find out, okay. And then when you get there, talk to people and say, hey, are there any, production coordinators or production managers here tonight? And so people will point you to them, so get to know those people. I charge based on how fun the job is. So if it's not fun, if I know it's not going to be fun, my rate goes up. If it's a fun job and I'm working with a bunch of people that I really like working with, then I'm pretty flexible.
Place your rate at a, you always should value your time, but place your rate at a a rate you feel good about and you're happy to get up and do it. Even if it's not, especially if it's a project that if you're still starting out or you want to get to know the client, and if it's an opportunity for you to grow creatively. That's how I judge whether I'm going to negotiate or not. If it's an opportunity to grow creatively, is it going to get exposure that I want? Is this just a job? Then, all that plays into it. I kind of have a rate that I stick to, and I usually don't have to worry about it. But if there is somebody who's trying to push back, then I think about what Randy was saying. If it's going to be fun or beneficial, then I can negotiate. But always have a reason to justify your price drop, because then that's just something I learned in sales. If you just because if you keep dropping your price for no reason, then they never know what your bottom is, so they may keep pushing. So it's a good idea to always have a reason to lower your price. Okay, well, I'll do it for that rate, but I won't bring this or I won't do that. You can do things like that, even though you would still do it, just to kind of because everything's a perceived value when you're dealing with clients that are not production people. Production people know what things should cost and what they generally pay. But if you're doing a video for a local coffee shop or a lawyer or dentist's office, they don't know production, and what they pay is about perceived value. So they may pay me one price, and another company may pay twice as much because they feel like they're getting more value from that company or that creative. It's a game and a dance you will always do in this field.
It's a game and a dance. That's a good way to position that. Yeah. The first 5 years, I said yes to everything of my career. Anything anybody wanted me to shoot, I'm like, yep. What's your budget? I'll do it. Okay. It started getting really good when I started turning down jobs. And then I got to a point where after a while I had a 3 red flag rule. I had a bunch of things that set off red flags for me. And if they hit 3 red flags, I turned them down flat. And so that worked to my advantage. My rates kept going up. I actually had a client one time say, he gave me 2 rates and I said, nope. And he goes, what's it going to take for me to get you? I gave him my rate thinking he'll never match this. And he said, okay. And so that's the point where you go, okay, I'm undervaluing myself. I need to charge more. Okay. And so, but it gets to that point where you have to get the experience in first. But
Right.
If they hit my 3, and I've said to clients, no, I'm not doing this. And they're like, well, you're turning me down. It's kind of like, most people don't get turned down like that. And I'm like, I tell them, you hit my 3 red flag rule. And they always say without fail, what's the 3 red flag rule? And I tell them, okay, there's no per diem, there's no travel, you're putting me up at a crappy hotel. Those are 3 of them. And they're like, oh, those are all negotiable. So once they realize that you're like, I'm not going to do this, then it becomes a little bit different ball game. But it depends on what side of the door you're on, how hungry you are and, how much experience you have. And like I said, I people used to say to me all the time, you got to start turning down jobs, because I was working all the time. Anytime anybody wanted me to shoot or edit or, produce something, I was like, yeah, I'm in, let's do it. But that's the way to learn.
Okay, Tyre had a question. Did you want to open up your mic, Tyre?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, Sean. All right. So I remember I offhandedly made this joke a lot of times, but I know for a fact that I'm a little serious. I watch a lot of reality TV because I just kind of enjoy it, and I've always wanted to be a cameraman for one of those productions. Do you have any advice for somebody who's trying to break into, I guess, network TV production stuff?
Reality is a very small market. When I first started out doing reality, it was right around the Real World Aussie age, and so there was a very small number of people doing it. And surprisingly, what a lot of people didn't realize is that a lot of the DPs that were working on the big reality shows like the Osbournes and Real World and Survivor and Apprentice and all those things were all here locally. A handful of guys that I knew. And so once you get into that arena, once you become good at doing it, but it's a specialty show, so you have to know how to do coverage. You have to know how to do a single camera coverage, a 2 camera coverage, a 3 camera coverage. You have to know how to do 4 camera coverages. So I spent a big part of my later career training reality camera people, on how to do that, because it's like you have to be a well-oiled machine when you're out there in the field, and it's run and gun, and it's you're expected to come away with great looking images, And there's all kinds of different versions. So, start as a PA or an AC. If you can get a job as an AC, if you're going to become a reality camera guy, get a job on a reality show as an AC assistant camera person, and then work your butt off. One season of a reality show with an AC, and then you could probably step up to like an assistant camera, where you're picking up and shooting. And so most of the ACs that I work with, they do all the GoPro stuff, and they do a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and as well as helping with media management, and changing batteries and prepping gear and getting everything set up. So it's a tough job. And I have friends that are professional ACs, and they do all the big reality shows. Like a good friend of mine is doing the Matchbox show right now up in Atlanta, and he just did the Lego show when he does a lot of HGTV reality stuff. And so there are genres of that, and so each genre has its own way. Like doing a HGV style show, that's a whole process. You have the process part of that, where your demo part, then the process part of that, and then the reveals, and then the sit and lits and standing in talks, types of interviews. So you have, again, it goes back to knowing the format, getting to know the format. There's some books out there. There are a couple books out there on shooting and producing reality television, about what that kind of explain things. But again, if you ever want to just sit down and do a Zoom meeting with me, by all means, don't hesitate to reach out. And I'll have to find it, but I have a document from back when I was teaching reality camera guys that went through all of that stuff. How to do handoffs, and it's a very special kind of shooting. And you have to be kind of versatile. You got to know a lot about lighting, and you got to kind of know your own sound a lot of the times, and be able to handle all that stuff. And then how to work together as a team. The reality. I say this all the time on the shows that I produced and directed that were reality shows. It wasn't me that was making the show great. It was the team. The fact that we had a team that worked really well together, made all the difference in whether or not a show was good or bad. Because I've seen good shows that had horrible crews that just didn't make it, and I've seen really bad shows that had great crews. The Dr. K show, for example, when I did the pilot, that I remember driving back to Orlando and the producer turning to me and saying, "What do you think?" And I was like, I don't think this was going to last. 8 seasons later, so that's what it's all about.
Awesome. Well, what do you say we wrap things up?
I'm gonna, I'll put my email in here if anybody wants to reach out to me in the chat room. Just don't hesitate to send me an email.
So really, really awesome questions. And Joni, if you'd like to put your email in there as well,
Sure.
that would be really great. I can't tell you how valuable our faculty are, not just because we're they're fountains of knowledge, but also helps to form of networking. I mean, you should have the faculty as maybe the start of your contact list, your black book of people you contact for advice for this and that. That really is part of the value of a full sail education. So
I always say this should be more like a mentorship than college degree.
Absolutely. Well, next month we kind of put a pin in the AI, because next month we are going to be talking nothing but AI. So it's a huge topic. It is a transformative, disruptive technology across everywhere, it seems. But in particular, we're going to be identifying it in filmmaking. So we are going to have a lot of similar panel, and hopefully a lot of great questions, and hopefully a lot of good answers. But stay tuned for that. Thank you everybody for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure, and I hope you learned a lot and took some stuff from it that really, despite what the media says, it's not the end of it's not even the end of Hollywood, and it's definitely not the end of the filmmaking world by any means. There is a ton of work out there for really whatever you want to do. The sky is still the limit, no matter what the unions say. So thank you all and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Later, everybody.